By way of introduction, let me just add to what Laura said. I'm not trained as an accountant, I'm a business owner. So in that respect, I'm just like you. But I've over 15, 20 years of ownership, what I came to understand is understanding how my business speaks to me was really important. And the business speaks to us through financial statements. That's the way it tells us how it's operating. There's 3 of them because each of them tell a different story. We're going to talk about each one of those a little bit. We're going to look at the components of them. The good news for you is no matter what your training has been, no matter what your experience has been, you already know these. And I'll, as we go through, I'm going to relate them to things that you already understand. These are just, the terms are different in business. The concepts are the same. If you're a homeowner, if you manage a household budget, if you have income from an employer and pay expenses and maybe have some left over at the end of the month, then the concepts are all familiar to you. We're just going to go through a format. We're going to look at how they're organized and how to read them. Good question about what about when I look, I have a 401k plan, I hold stock in a publicly traded company. I wonder if we'll cover that. Let me say this in advance. We're going to talk about the kind of common format that all of these statements follow. There's a reason that financial statements are organized and prepared in the same way. And it's so that we can compare a local company and its performance that might be privately owned to perhaps a publicly traded company. And we know that I'm going to read the report card, the financial statement, in the same way. I would expect when I look at the financial statements for IBM, they're going to look a lot like the financial statements for my company. They're going to be a little bigger, but they're going to follow the same order. So what we learned tonight ought to enable you to go on the website of a publicly traded company tomorrow, bring up their financial statements, look at their earnings statement, their profit and loss statement, their balance sheet, and say, I recognize that. In fact, I can tell something about how they're operating based on what I've learned. Okay. So I promise you, when you're done here tonight, nothing ought to surprise you. As an owner of a company, I don't expect owners to know how to do bookkeeping. That's what we hire bookkeepers for. In fact, if you ask me questions about debits and credits, I still get those mixed up because sometimes I think they're backwards. But that's what we hire bookkeepers for. The reason you need to understand financial statements is to understand how the business is operating. So when we go to the doctor, and I say, doctor, I'm really having trouble breathing. He doesn't take my temperature and say, Greg, you're 98.6, you're healthy. Because maybe I ought to check your respiration. So the doctors use different tests. They look at our bodies from different points of view to understand really how we're operating. We're going to look at the health of the business from 3 different points of view to understand how it's performing. And that's why there's 3 different reports. They tell 3 different stories. Tonight you'll see how they work together, what stories they tell, and why it's important for you to understand that and be able to interpret it. In fact, the goal, if you're an owner tonight, is that you can ask informed questions. So that you can look at the report cards for your business and not know how to fix it, but to know when you should be asking a question. Asking a question of your bookkeeper, asking a question of your outside accounting firm. That's what I want for you. Okay?